Navy courtyard tense with rumors and unspoken fear, an admiral casually asks a quiet young officer a question he thinks is harmless. "What's your kill count?" He expects a laugh. She gives him the truth, and that truth shakes the entire naval command to its core, revealing the hidden scars, silent sacrifices, and harrowing missions nobody knew she carried. Before the story begins, where are you watching from today? And if stories of silent heroes and untold courage matter to you, please subscribe so you never miss another one. The question sliced through the morning air like an unexpected blade. The Admiral, Leonard Rathford, a man known for a confident stride and an ego polished to a mirror sheen, stood at the center of the naval operations deck, surrounded by officers who watched him the way junior planets orbit a brilliant star. His voice, usually carried with authority, now bore a hint of playful mockery as he looked toward the lone figure standing at the end of the formation. "Lieutenant Mara Hale," he called out pleasantly, though the pleasantness carried an undercurrent that made even seasoned veterans glance away. "Tell me something. What's your kill count?" The laughter he expected from the crowd never arrived. Perhaps the air sensed the disrespect before the people did. Perhaps the silence itself recoiled. Mara's eyes lifted, calm, steady, unflinching. No one knew what she would say. They only knew one thing: she was not the kind to joke about life, death, or anything caught between. Her answer came soft, almost weightless, but its impact struck like a depth charge. 47, she said. A wave of stillness rippled outward. The officers around her froze, breaths half taken. The Admiral's smile faltered, thinned, and finally died. 47. Not spoken boastfully, not whispered in shame, spoken as truth. And in that moment, everyone understood this was no ordinary officer. Mara Hale had always carried herself differently from those around her. While others wore their uniforms like a badge, she wore hers like armor. Not the kind forged from metal, but from memories, layers of loss, resilience, and the burden of promises kept long after the battlefield fell silent. She was small compared to the towering figures around her, but nothing about her presence felt small. Her stillness had gravity. Her silence had weight. She moved like someone who had learned the cost of every footstep. On her first day at the naval base, people had watched her with mild curiosity, reading her file but not her soul. They saw commendations, citations, mysterious redacted lines, enough to guess she'd come from deep operations, but not enough to know the depth of what she had survived. She had arrived with no fanfare, saluted with precision, and asked for nothing. No one expected she carried more ghosts than most battlefields. The sunlight over the deck felt too bright for the Admiral's suddenly paling face. He had asked the question intending to amuse his officers, to lighten a morning inspection with a joke at the expense of the newest transfer. A quiet young woman who rarely spoke unless asked. He had underestimated her, or worse, dismissed her completely. The officers exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others ashamed they hadn't intervened earlier. Their silence was its own confession. Mara's gaze did not waver. She did not flinch. She only stood, hands behind her back, the slight breeze nudging the edge of her hair as though nature itself tried to soften the moment. One of the junior officers swallowed hard. He had served in combat zones and knew what it meant for someone her age to have taken even one life. He could hardly imagine 47. Not unless she had been somewhere brutal, somewhere merciless, somewhere where survival was not a guarantee, but a negotiation with fate. Admiral Rathford forced a chuckle, a brittle, cracking sound. "Well," he managed. "No need to take everything so literally, Lieutenant. It was just a—" But he couldn't finish the sentence. Mara wasn't smiling. And something in her eyes, something ancient, wounded, and terribly quiet, told him the truth. She had not taken those lives willingly. She had taken them because others would have died if she hadn't. Mara's backstory lived in the shadows of classified files and forgotten corners of the military archive. But the omniscient heir of this world saw what the officers could not. Years earlier, she had been deployed to the archipelago conflict, a mission publicly reported as a minor skirmish, but privately known as a nightmare. She had entered her first combat zone at 21, carrying a med kit, a rifle, and a heart not yet hardened by war. Her unit had been tasked with extracting trapped civilians from an island overtaken by hostile forces. By the time they arrived, smoke had already turned the sky a sickly orange. The smell of burning rope and shattered wood mixed with the heavy, metallic sting of fear that clung to every breath the survivors exhaled. On her third day during an evacuation convoy, an ambush erupted from the cliffs above. Mara, positioned near the rear with a group of wounded civilians, saw her commanding officer fall beneath a sudden barrage. She remembered rushing to him, the warmth of his blood soaking her gloves, his last words choked yet steady. Protect them. No matter what. And she had. Every day after, she protected them. Through sniper fire, through collapsing structures, through ambushes that came in the whispering dark. Each life she took was a last resort, a line in the sand drawn, not to boast, but to survive and shield those behind her. The number 47 was carved into her memory, not as victories but as elegies. Each one paired with a name she had saved, a child, a fellow soldier, a mother searching for her son, a medic pinned beneath rubble. She remembered it all. The smell of wet earth mixed with fear, the tremble of her own hands the first time she fired, the way the world blurred when she thought she might break. But she never did, because someone had to stand, someone had to stay steady even when their soul trembled. Back on the naval base deck, Admiral Rathford shifted, suddenly aware of how the officers around him now watched him, not Mara. Judgment flickered in their eyes. Even if they didn't speak it aloud, everyone understood he had crossed a line. And yet Mara remained silent, her silence more powerful than any reprimand. A quote fluttered through the thoughts of several watching officers, unspoken but felt. Some heroes carry their battles in silence so others never have to hear the echoes. But the Admiral, embarrassed, defensive, and too proud to admit fault, decided to continue the inspection as if nothing had happened. He tried to regain his posture, barked a few commands, and moved down the line, but his voice betrayed cracks. Every officer stood rigid, avoiding his gaze. Their stillness was not respect, it was resistance. Only Mara remained unchanged, steady as an anchor. That was the beginning of the shift. Rumors spread before lunchtime. Within hours, officers from across the base found reasons to pass by Mara in the corridors, some out of curiosity, others out of quiet solidarity. A few nodded respectfully, though most simply observed her with a new, profound awareness. She did not revel in any of it. She simply carried out her duties, checking maintenance logs, reviewing emergency protocols, ensuring supplies were accounted for. Her hands moved with practiced precision, her mind focused on the present. But beneath her calm exterior, a ripple of discomfort stirred. She had not wanted attention. She had hoped for a fresh start, away from memories that clung like a second skin. Still, she knew the Admiral's question had not been meant for true understanding. It had been meant to diminish her. And Mara Hale did not diminish. That evening, a storm gathered over the coastline, the sky purples with purples and deepening grays. Lightning flickered, illuminating the ocean in brief flashes of silver. The wind carried the scent of salt and rain, thick and heavy. Inside the command building, a strategic meeting unfolded, focused on piracy threats in nearby waters. Maps were sprawled across tables, dotted with markers representing unknown dangers. As attendees filed in, some glanced toward Mara, wondering if she would speak, if she would defend herself, if she would confront the Admiral. She did none of those things. She simply took a seat at the far end, listening, letting others voice their strategies. Her silence was not withdrawal, it was observation, the kind that came from surviving places where one mistake cost lives. As the meeting progressed, Admiral Rathford presented a plan involving a narrow strait and an exposed supply convoy. Several officers shifted uneasily. Something about the route felt wrong. Mara's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in instinct. A familiar sensation crawled through her chest. The last time she had felt it, her unit had narrowly avoided an ambush that would have wiped out half their force. She raised her hand. "All due respect, sir," she said, voice even. "Your proposed route leaves the convoy exposed to elevated ridge lines on the north and east. There are 3 blind corners with limited maneuvering space. If hostile forces are present, escape becomes nearly impossible." Her words were precise, calm, factual. The Admiral stiffened, pride threatening to override reason. "Lieutenant Hale," he said coldly, "I've led naval operations since before you enlisted. I believe I understand strategic vulnerabilities." Her expression did not change. "Understood, sir." But silence fell over the room with an unmistakable weight. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some knew her background. Others only sensed that the air shifted whenever she spoke, as if experience shaped every syllable. A captain cleared his throat hesitantly. Respectfully, sir, the lieutenant has a point. We've seen increased radio silence from the northern ridge. It could indicate concealed activity. Another officer added softly, if she senses danger, I trust her read. The Admiral's jaw tightened. His authority was slipping, and Mara had not even raised her voice. This was the second shift. Outside, thunder rolled across the water. The storm grew darker, more turbulent. The wind rattled windows with the insistence of something trying to warn them. While the meeting continued, a young sailor slipped into the room, breathless. Sir, urgent report, he said, handing the Admiral a message slip. The Admiral unfolded it with impatient hands. His face blanched. There had been an attack near the ridge lines Mara had mentioned, on a civilian research vessel. No survivors confirmed. Hostile forces unaccounted for. Her instincts had been right. A hush fell, not the hush of fear, but the hush of realization. Mara did not gloat, did not smirk. She simply lowered her gaze, the stormlight reflecting off her calm expression. A quote drifted through the room like a shared thought. Wisdom often speaks softly. Pride rarely listens. Admiral Rathford swallowed hard. He could no longer deny the truth staring him down. Mara Hale's experience was not theoretical. It was lived, survived, and paid for with blood. Later that night, as the storm raged, a call came through the base. A naval rescue craft had lost power near the reefs. The waves were brutal, visibility near zero, and the distress beacon fading. A rescue team was needed, immediately. Officers gathered at the docks, the wind whipping at their faces, rain stinging like needles. The Admiral rushed to organize a deployment, but panic crept through the ranks. The reef's too dangerous. Then Mara stepped forward. I'll go, she said simply. No bravado, no hesitation, only purpose. The Admiral stared at her in a swirl of guilt, admiration, and disbelief. You alone? He asked, voice cracking despite himself. I'll take a small team, she replied. Too many people will slow us down. Her steady tone cut through the storm's chaos. Officers behind her straightened involuntarily, inspired by her quiet courage. Within minutes, 3 volunteers stepped forward, an engineer, a seasoned petty officer, and a medic who had heard whispers of Mara's past, and decided she was someone worth following. They boarded a patrol craft and disappeared into the storm. The sea welcomed them with roaring hostility. The wind howled across the deck, and waves crashed with such force that the craft tilted dangerously. But Mara stood firm, gripping the rail, her eyes scanning the dark horizon. Lightning flashed, revealing jagged silhouettes of rocks lurking beneath the foam. The radio crackled faint, distorted. Mara adjusted frequencies, her voice calm despite the tempest. Rescue craft, this is Lieutenant Hale. Hold your position if possible. We are en route. Static answered, but beneath it, faint. She heard a voice trembling with fear. They were close. The patrol craft pushed deeper, and soon the missing vessel emerged from the darkness, tilted, damaged, and at the mercy of the waves. The sight stirred a memory in Mara's chest, of another vessel, another storm. Another night when she had nearly lost everyone she cared about. Her jaw clenched. Not again. Not while she was here. The team secured ropes, braving the storm to pull the survivors aboard, 3 sailors, barely conscious, drenched and shivering. The moment the last one was lifted, the damaged craft succumbed to the sea. As they turned back toward base, one of the survivors whispered, "You saved us." Mara knelt beside him, checking his pulse. "You were worth saving," she said simply. When the petrol craft returned, dawn had begun to seep through the clouds, painting the water with muted gold. Officers lined the docks, not because they had been ordered to, but because respect drew them there. The Admiral stood at the front. His posture was no longer inflated by pride, but humbled. When Mara stepped onto the dock, soaked, exhausted, but steady as ever, he approached her slowly. "Lieutenant Hale," he said, voice low, subdued. "I owe you an apology. Both for my words earlier and for doubting your judgment." Mara didn't seek validation. She only nodded gently. "We all have things to learn, sir." Her grace struck him harder than any reprimand could. Officers around them watched in silence, an unspoken honor guard. Some placed hands over their hearts. Others simply bowed their heads. It was not ceremony. It was acknowledgement, the kind reserved for someone who carried silent scars and still chose to save others. A third quote lingered in the air, soft, powerful, unforgettable. True strength is quiet. Those who hold it never need to raise their voice. The Navy courtyard that once witnessed mockery now witnessed transformation. Mara Hale became a symbol in the days that followed, not of warfare, but of dignity. Of the quiet heroes who walk among others unnoticed until the moment the world needs them. And Admiral Rathford, changed by humility, often repeated the lesson she had taught him without ever intending to teach. Respect every soldier. You never know the battles they've already fought to stand here today. Some heroes carry their courage in silence, their stories hidden behind calm eyes and steady hands. Mara Hale reminds us that respect isn't earned through rank or volume, it's earned through character, sacrifice, and the willingness to protect others, even when carrying invisible wounds. Where are you watching from today? And what part of this story moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet strength of real-life heroes.